Well, it is time for our STBB attorneys segment, legal segment, and we have Marica, Fourie associate there at STBB this morning in studio. Good morning, Marica.
Good morning. Thanks for having me this morning.
It's lovely to have you in studio.
Great to be here.
Listen, okay, so we're going to discuss Property Practitioners Act.
Yes,
Quite an interesting one this morning. So let's just briefly say what exactly is this the Property Practitioners Act?
Okay, so the Property Practitioners Act is a new piece of legislation which replaced the Estate Agencies Affairs Act and has recently been signed into law by the President.
Okay,
Right.
so it's a recent act now.
Yes.
I know that this is not the Poppy Act. They said
No,
that's
no.
also something new, and we're going to
Yes, that
discuss
is
this
new,
later. Yeah,
But
that's different.
Okay, so what are the key objectives of the Property Practitioners Act?
So its main purpose is to establish the Property Practitioners Authority and to regulate the affairs of all property practitioners, to allow for transformation in the property sector and to provide for consumer protection. The new act is broad and deals with various problems facing the property market to address the slow transformation in the property sector.
Okay.
The act is also aimed at addressing the deficiencies in what has been a largely ineffective system of monitoring estate agency matters and protecting consumers and their trust funds.
Fantastic.
Okay, so you mentioned briefly in the beginning the Property Act, just what exactly it is, but now I want to find out who falls under this act.
Okay, so in order to achieve its objectives, the Act uses the phrase property practitioner, which is much broader than an estate agent as defined in the Estate Agency Affairs Act. A property practitioner is any person who, for the acquisition of gain, directly or indirectly, on the instructions or on behalf of another, sells, purchases or manages the sale of any property or business undertaking, collects or receives money payable for a lease. Thus, the definition extends well beyond estate agents. It notionally also includes auctioneers, property developers, property managers, franchisees, providers of bridging finance, and bond brokers. It excludes from the definition are the entire legal fraternity, like sheriffs of the court, a person offering property practitioner services but not in the normal course of its business, and any person selling their own property.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, let's shift gears. I want to find out, since we have you here, what is the Fidelity Fund certificate?
So anyone who falls within the ambit of the definition of a property practitioner is required under the Act to obtain a certificate issued by the Fidelity Fund.
Okay.
These certificates will be valid for 3 years until the 31st of December of each year in which the Fidelity Fund certificate was approved. Okay, so no property practitioner may render services or receive fees for any work done without a valid Fidelity Fund certificate.
Oh, wow.
Is that the main purpose of it then? So
Yes.
exactly the purpose of the Fidelity certificate.
Yes, so even conveyancers are prohibited from paying any money to a property practitioner without receiving a copy of that property practitioner's valid Fidelity Fund certificate.
That's quite interesting.
Okay, how could one know if the property practitioner is in possession of such a certificate? You ask them, hey, where's your certificate? How do you go about that?
Yeah.
Sorry, just...
Yeah, so the thing is basically, so we have the purpose, but now we want to know exactly, what is, if I walk to a site now, I want to know, are you in possession of it or not?
Yes, so the Fidelity Fund certificate must at all times in every place of business be displayed where the agent conducts property transactions and must accompany every agreement in relation to the property transactions. So it must be displayed at all.
Oh, so you must have it there displayed,
must have it,
wherever you work. That's quite interesting. This morning we have Marica Fourie, the associate at STBB Attorneys, and we're discussing the Property Practitioners Act and also the Fidelity Fund certificate that you have to have with you at all times. So now, Marica, I want to know to whom may this certificate not be issued?
So it may not be issued to non-South African citizens, illegal residents in South Africa, any persons who have in the preceding 5 years been found guilty of a contravention of the new Act, any persons of unsound mind, persons that are under rehabilitated insolvency, persons who are not in a possession of a valid tax clearance certificate.
Okay.
Yes, so that's the basic of it.
Okay, so just say you missed the email that said you have to have the certificate and this is the industry you are working in. What are the consequences for not having this Fidelity Fund certificate?
Okay, so the consequences are any property practitioner in contravention of the Act will be required to repay any fees received for a property transaction and may be issued with a fine. Furthermore, any person convicted of an offence in terms of the Act is liable to pay a fine or to imprisonment up to 10 years.
Okay.
Sure.
That's quite interesting.
Quite hefty.
I quickly want to go back to this Fidelity Fund certificate. The purpose. Now, we just briefly went over that. But I think there's much more to this purpose of this certificate. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that purpose?
Yes, so the Fidelity Fund's primary purpose is to reimburse persons who suffer loss by virtue of theft or of trust money by property practitioners or failure by property practitioners to comply with the provisions of the Act, requiring a separate trust account and proper accounting records. The point of a Fidelity Fund certificate is to provide the consumer with protection against theft or money that has been entrusted to a property practitioner, such as money meant to buy a house, rental income, or rental deposits.
Okay. Now we know more about the certificate, because I must tell you, I'm not in that industry, so it's so interesting to really get to the core of this. And there's lots of people listening now, sitting there and say, okay, well, now I need to get my certificate ready and actually valid. But thanks a lot, Marica, for coming in this morning. Now we know more about the Property Practitioners Act, and that's how we get to know all these different acts that we never know of.
And also then we know that there are systems in place that people have to adhere to.
Exactly.
And now we know, hey, do you have the certificate? Otherwise, you're not legit. I'm not going to work with you. Thank you for informing us.
Thanks for having me.
Marica, but if people want to know more, they want to know exactly the Property Practitioner Act, how it fits into your business. If you want to know more, they can always contact you guys.
Yes, of course.
The number there
We'll
again.
be happy to provide them with any further
You can just ask for Marica Fourie. She is the one that knows about this. The number there is 021-850-6400. Marica, thanks for coming in this morning.
Thank you so much,
We'll
guys.
chat
Have
again.
a great day.
Thanks, you too. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hierdie regskolomprogram was met trots aangebied deur STBB Prokureurs vir vooraanstaande regsadvies teen bekostigbare tariewe. Skakel hulle op 021-850-6400. Jy kan ook hulle gaan besoek daarso in die Paardevlei sentrum en hulle is aan die linkerkant STBB Prokureurs. Jy kan dit nie mis nie. Jy moet net onthou dat hierdie segment Radio Helderberg of STBB Prokureurs nie aanspreeklik gehou kan word vir enige skade gelei wat voortspruit uit advies gegee in hierdie regskolomprogram nie. Elke saak moet op sy eie meriete hanteer word.